Now we're going to talk about simplifying rational expressions, and we're going to try to simplify this expression as much as we can, just through the process of canceling. And just like 8x over 8, the 8's cancel, and we just wind up with x, or xyz over yz, well, the y's cancel, the z's cancel, so we wind up with x. Expressions can cancel as well, as long as they're identical. So these x minus 2's can cancel. I can cancel those out, and I'm going to wind up with 2. And over here, the numbers can cancel, and we're just left with an expression, which is x minus 2. X minus 2 is the solution to that. So coming back here, we're going to use skills that we've already acquired throughout the course of the second semester. We're going to factor out the GCF on the top one, which the GCF in this instance is 4. We wind up with x minus 6. And on the bottom, we've got a quadratic equation, so we've got to do the 2 sets of parentheses. We've got to break up the x's. We're going to look here, in case you forgot. We either have 2 positives or 2 negatives. Look here, and we have 2 negatives, that means. What times what gives you 36 that adds up to 12? Well, 6 and 6. And now we can actually cancel. We can simplify it, cancel out the x minus 6's. So we wind up with 4 over x minus 6. You can write it with or without the parentheses. Basically, if you're not going to do anything with the parentheses, then they vanish. But if you want to write them with the parentheses, I'm not going to mark it wrong. I also want to point out, when finding the domain, or the variable that x cannot be, and we did talk about this at the very beginning of the year when we were finding domains of functions, is you can never have a 0 in your denominator. So ask yourself, if it says state the excluded variable values, if you encounter that, what you're going to want to do is figure out what value of x is going to make your denominator 0. In this instance, what minus 6 is 0, x cannot be equal to 6 because you can never have 0 in the denominator. So find the zeros. And when you find the zeros, as we know, as we learned, that is where the function is going to cross the x-axis. So when you're on the x-axis, your value of y, or your output, in this case f of x, is 0. And now you can solve this problem. So we're going to find our zeros, or we're going to solve for x. So first we're going to factor out the 3 here. Start out by factoring out the GCF. So we're going to factor out the 3, and we're left with x squared minus 6x plus 8 over x minus 6. And now we've got a quadratic, which we are going to factor. We've got x minus 2, x minus 4 over x minus 6. And now, what we can do to get rid of this denominator is just cross multiply. So I'm going to cross multiply, or I can multiply both sides by x minus 6. Actually, that's easier. It's easier to look at it that way, I think. So 0 times x minus 6 is just 0, and over here it cancels. So now we just have 3 x minus 2, x minus 4 is equal to 0. Divide both sides by 3, and we're left with x minus 2, x minus 4 is equal to 0. And we would set both of these equal to 0, and we would find out that our zeros are at positive 2. Let me make this bigger. I'll just move it down. But we find out that x is equal to 2 and 4.